Thanks for tuning in. Meet Cameron Johnson, an incredibly talented cybersecurity practitioner you all should know. I'm here to talk to Cameron about his path to cybersecurity. And during this video, we're going to discuss some questions and advice from the community. And my name is Jordan Famularo, and I'm excited to be here.
Thanks for that, Jordan. It's my pleasure to meet you this night. I really appreciate you taking some time out this evening to meet me, and I'm looking forward to our conversation ahead.
Cam, to get things rolling, could you tell us who you are, what your role is, and where you work?
Well, as you said, my name is Cameron Johnson. I'm in Atlanta, Georgia. I work for WarnerMedia as a business information security officer, in which my responsibility is to understand business requirements and then take them to tech teams, break them down, get the real spiel on what's going on, and then kind of, mesh together what needs to happen and what the business wants and figure out a happy solution for everything. Or more often than not, I just don't want to be the bad guy in cybersecurity.
That's cool. And tell us a little bit more about how you got there. What made you pursue a career in technology first, as I understand, and then cybersecurity?
So when I first went to school, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I started college as a biomedical engineer. And through our conversations, I told you I was really big into like gaming and everything. And one day I decided, biomedical engineering doesn't make sense. And I got into computer science. I learned how to code. I had a great time with that. And I was actually a software engineer for 3 years. I had a peer who I just knew for a while who kind of would put a bug in my ear, to say, hey, check out cybersecurity. And if I step back into college, I actually changed my major from computer science to IT, information security and assurance. And I remember watching this video about a student at MIT, and he was cracking passwords. He was doing brute force attacks. He was doing dictionary attacks. And it kind of blew my mind because I didn't really know anything about that beforehand. So I was like, okay, this seems kind of interesting. So I took college courses on it. I did ethical hacking. I did digital forensics. I learned Linux and everything. And so, that's kind of how I kind of, figured out about cybersecurity. I sat in my role as a software engineer for 3 years, got my Security Plus certification, and then decided just to actually hop over into, I got a job in risk for a while, for a few months. And then I got the opportunity to go to WarnerMedia and actually be a BSO. And so it's been really good there. I feel like I've learned a lot. I have a chance to use my certification every day, my skills as a software engineer every day, and everything is kind of moving beautifully.
That's amazing. Thanks for telling us a little bit about that. All right, so let's think a little bit about your job now. What kind of values keep you centered in your job right now?
At my job right now, you have to be a good listener. There's a lot of personalities there, and it's a beautiful thing, really. So being a good listener and being candid, telling people what can and can't work is a good thing to kind of go forward in, because you have to be realistic about their wants and then what the actual policies and standards are in your role. And then, you have to also be a problem solver, and, you have to be genuine in that. So when somebody kind of comes to you and asks you for a difficult thing that you don't really know about, being, thorough and being, having integrity as well, being able to say, okay, I'll do my research on this and get back to you. That's very important, because at the end of the day, as the person who is, quote unquote, or I guess not quote unquote, but being the person who is responsible for the security of such major applications, you have to have due diligence. You have to be candid. You have to tell people what can and can't work. So just, staying level headed, being a good communicator, and just, being honest to people, it really helps me every day in my job, because it can be confusing, and it's a huge and broad field. So you have to be ready and willing to work with people.
I tell you what, it was pretty obvious in my first conversation with you that you were an incredibly good active listener. So I'm glad to hear you share that part about you, because I can tell how that skill comes alive in your work for sure. I think I also wanted to ask you a little bit about why you decided to share the mic in cybersecurity and what you've learned so far.
So really, I have to give all the credit to my boss, Nicole Dove. She's the one who pushed me to do this. You probably wouldn't believe it. I told you before, I consider myself to be, shy. I don't usually do stuff like this. or in a younger phase, I didn't do stuff like this, and I think that what I most desire when I was kind of, in college and everything, was a role model for the industry. I didn't know what I wanted to be. I don't know too many people, or I didn't know too many people who were African American and they were doing cybersecurity or software engineering. So while I was seeking the field, I didn't have anyone to go to for that. So I decided I wanted to be that person. So this is a big first step in kind of growing into that role and being a role model for people behind me. And I want to, get my story out there, and I want to get my friend's story out there, and I want to keep meeting people and just kind of pushing the narrative to say, hey, we can do it. This is a field that we can excel in, and that I expect us to excel in. So here's my first stab at doing something like this.
Um, that's great. I didn't realize that you had such vision about just shaping a role model that maybe wasn't there. And I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Um, is it fair to ask, what do you want the future of Black practitioners in cyber to look like?
Um, I what I want the future is, I really rather it start with education for people. When I was in high school, I'm from Albany, Georgia. There was really, we would just be, you played sports, or you knew about being a lawyer, doctor, engineer. I didn't know about software engineering. I didn't know about cybersecurity. And I mean, I grew up, in the 2000s, so it wasn't a huge thing, but especially where I was from. So in the future, I want more people to kind of push the envelope and kind of educate the youth to know about this stuff from a young age, so that, we can grow up and actually want to fulfill these roles, so that we can go to college and have that mindset, so that we can know, okay, we're, when you can be you'll be a sophomore in college, you'll know, hey, I know how to use Linux, because I didn't know how to use Linux until I was like a junior. I'd never touched Linux before, which is, back in the day, it was embarrassing, but now I use it almost every day. That's something that knowledge has to start being shared somewhere. So the future for me is, a sharing of knowledge, more role models to look up after, people to get mentorships from, and just proliferation into the industry. I want to see more people look like me in the industry for sure, because that was something I felt like I was lacking throughout my, college time, and, in my professional career as well for a bit.
I see. Yeah, I wanted to ask you if you could tell us about some challenges you've had in your college and career path so far. It sounds like some of the challenges you met along the way are reflected in what you just said, but you tell me.
Yeah, I think probably one that a lot of my friends and I kind of faced was imposter syndrome, and like I said, it all stems from feeling like you almost don't belong in the industry, and you have to really fight against that. I feel like, I remember being in college and I took my first Java course. This is when I was still a computer science student, and I remember, just trying to learn some of the basics, and some of the other students in the class, oh, I've been doing this since middle school. I've been doing this since high school. This is easy. And I felt slow, and that just kind of showed me the difference of primary education, and some of those students were white, they were in Northern Georgia. Their schools had a little better funding than what I did where we were from, and it made me realize that everybody didn't exactly get the same education. And it made me almost feel bad at the time. And then I kind of carried that mindset forward of I'm so far behind. And I didn't know I was so far behind until I got into this hard coding class. And then I kind of carried this mindset forward into my professional career, where I got a job as a software engineer, and I felt like I wasn't qualified. I remember a crazy instance of where I was in training, and I felt like I was struggling in training, and there was this Black woman, she was teaching the course, and I just kind of offhandedly said to her, I'm not as smart as them. And she got so mad at me, and I'm sitting there like, okay, what did I do wrong? What did I do wrong? And and it's crazy for me to realize that I didn't even realize what I had said about myself. I didn't value myself and my knowledge um, at that point in time. And, 3 years later, I feel like I kind of really fulfilled that role. I excelled at it. I learned so much, and I put my best foot forward, so those are some real challenges there. I feel like finding a few role models like Nicole Dub, Tiffany Combre, those are just some managers I've had in the past. They believed in me, and they looked like me, and they said, you know what, You can do this. People weren't going to expect as much from you, but you have the capability to do that. And that kind of that boosted my mindset. That gave me it gave me what felt like a fighting chance almost. And then I kind of fulfilled and met everyone's expectations from that point forward, And I try to do that every day, even now.
Wow, that's really profound, and I'm so glad that that I got to hear that, and our audience will get to hear that. I want to switch gears to some questions that we got from the community, but before we do that, is there anything else that you'd like to share with the Share the Mic in Cyber audience?
Um, Off the top of my head, I really don't have too much. I mean, it's just been a pleasure, just doing this. I encourage anybody watching this to try to sign up for this next year. I literally was not going. I wasn't going to. I think I signed up like the day before it closed, actually, and so I thought there's no way I'm going to get in. But I mean, it's just been such an experience just to get to know you, Jordan. It's I My eyes have been open. I love to meet new people. I like to educate people as well. So I mean, it's been a good experience, and I'll definitely be doing more things like this. So to everyone who's kind of organized this, I really got to say thank you. Before we kind of keep going.
Yeah, me too. I'm really grateful for this opportunity. And I'm excited to go through some of the questions and advice that we got.
Yeah, we got some good ones.
We sent out a survey and got some really great responses. For example, Nicole wrote to us. She's a BISO who offered perspective on the cyber workforce. And she gave 3 tips that we could talk about. One is you don't have to know how to code to work in cyber. 2, the threat landscape across cyber is changing every day. So the talent has got to evolve as well. And I think following that is her 3rd point, which is cyber needs more diverse representation. There's a spot for everyone. As long as you're curious and innovative, you can find a niche. And so, yeah, saying all that, Nicole follows up, and it's a pretty big question. The question is, what is the biggest misconception about the cybersecurity industry?
I think I can think of a few of them. The first one I want to say is the people who work in it. Everybody feels like cybersecurity practitioners have to be like all old military people who are just all scary and grumpy and mean, who don't have the organization's best interest in mind. And that's not really true, just my brief, year tenure in the industry overall. And it's just shown me there's such a diverse cast of people who are really passionate, they're energetic, and they love to kind of like they're problem solvers. They're not roadblockers, and so that's a huge misconception. And maybe another one would be, you don't have to be super technical, like Nicole said, to get into it. You can come from scratch and join cybersecurity. And I mean, people will tell you that it's impossible, and it's not. You really can. It's just all about what you're willing to learn and how hard you're willing to work to get in there.
Yeah, hearing from the community, we did receive a lot of questions about talent development. So I'm hoping to ask you a little bit more about that. We had 2 people who asked about skills for entry into the field. They wanted to know, what's the number 1 technical skill for newbies? And then I think I'm going to add on to that, and I'm going to ask, what is the number 1 people skill?
Okay, technical skill. I would say get comfortable, if you're going for a technical role, get comfortable with some of those other operating systems like Linux, like Kali Linux, and the tools that are kind of involved with it. And maybe to also be proficient in being able to read logs, because if you're coming in from a technical angle, you're likely going to be you're going to try to get into the SOC. So you're going to be reading logs and doing threat response, some sort of analytics, or some sort of analytical role where you have to do a lot of reading and running commands on some sort of box and everything. So technically, you need to be able to work with a computer, a Linux computer in most cases, and you need to be comfortable reading a wall of text and logs and be patient. You got to work on that patience. Now, for people skills, you need to be able to listen, because if you aren't listening, you'll just kind of fall into a mindset. And I've almost caught myself doing this. You'll fall into a roadblock mindset where you kind of deny everything. And that is a type of cybersecurity practitioner that nobody likes. You want somebody who can understand the requirements and think of a secure, creative solution to their problems that allow them to kind of keep working towards what they need to work towards. So that is the type of person you want to strive to be in the industry.
Yeah, I hear that. We had some questions too, not so much skill-centered questions, but a little bit more practical. So Don asked, what are your tips to help someone enter the cybersecurity field? Kind of a general question. And maybe you could at the same time address a related question from Tori, which is, where do you start practicing for work as a security analyst?
Okay. To get into the industry, I think first of all, this is what I did. I started reading more about it. I watched YouTubers. I think everybody's heard of Professor Messer. If you're trying to get a Security Plus or a Network Plus or anything like that, anything CompTIA related, you're gonna go through Professor Messer, and you want to start kind of getting into the industry. You want to know more about, okay, well, what hacks are happening? If you go to Bleeping Computer, you'll see that. You want to watch practitioners to figure out what type of role you want. So you want to do a deep dive to see where you might fit in, and then look at your own skills from there. First of all, once you kind of identify where you might best fit, I would start, doing a deeper dive into what those roles could be, some of the skills they require. So if you're going to be a security analyst, you need to know how to use tools like maybe like Splunk, for instance, or Brinka, which is a vulnerability management tool. You want to be able to speak to those tools and be able to at least go on an interview and say, hey, I'm not the most proficient in this field, but I can use tools X, Y, and Z, and I can get in there. Or if you're in more of an auditory role, you want to be able to say, hey, I'm this well written, I'm this detail organized, and I have experience doing X, Y, and Z. Because cybersecurity is a very broad area to work in. It's a broad place to work in. So there's a lot of different ways you can get into there. And to step back into the other question about getting to security analyst role, like I said again, I think tools, attention to detail, just kind of familiarizing yourself with the work. Go to YouTube and look at there's videos out there, people showing you what that security analyst role looks like. Watch those videos. Familiarize yourself with those tools. If you're going to try to become an ethical hacker, go to things like tryhackme.com, and just really just get a feel for it, because you can't. It's so hard to explain it without you actually just trying it.
Yeah. And maybe this relates to advice that we heard from Jordan, not me, but another Jordan who answered our survey, which is to think a little bit about the sector you want to go into and maybe familiarize yourself with the regulations and frameworks that apply there. So, for example, like financial services or healthcare, and sort of get to know those sectors in other ways was her suggestion.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so what about approaches to retaining good talent? A person who works in policy asked us, how do we invest in retaining individuals after recruiting them and hiring them?
I think that kind of speaks to that's an industry wide question that everyone kind of has to face. Uh, I think you need to value your workers. You need to respect your workers overall. Nobody needs to be getting burnt out. SOC has a bad reputation of burning people out. So make sure you're kind of honoring those people, respecting their time, and compensating them fairly. And I think what I want to speak to more is give people a chance as well. It is so hard. I have so many friends who are trying to break into the industry, and people won't give them a chance because they just want people who have a wall of credentials. And, those people are obviously going to ask for way more in salary, and they're going to be, they might not even take the role. People, it seems to be so difficult to find an entry level job. And I complain to myself, there's almost no entry level roles in cybersecurity, at least from my young perspective. It felt like it was almost impossible. I had a degree, I got the certification, and I think what finally got me in was my experience on the back end as a software engineer to paint this entire picture to get actually in there. So give people a chance. If you're a hiring manager, somebody who might be new, see what their mindset is, see if they have what it takes to actually fill out that role, instead of just saying, oh, you don't have requirements X, Y, and Z, so next. Be very, do a little more due diligence when it comes to recruiting people as well.
I completely agree. I think the question should be, who do we need for our team, not what skill, what certifications do we need? I think that former question can be more powerful. And maybe this relates also to something we heard from one of our survey participants, Rike, who advised practitioners to share their progress with the world, and I would offer that employers ought to be celebrating the contributions of individual practitioners too along the way, as a way to celebrate what's been done, and to elevate those contributions as a way to build the team and to solidify the team?
Yeah. I think from my perspective, I think that kind of goes into something you asked me earlier, where I almost didn't give myself enough credit for the work that I was doing. And you have to take time to acknowledge how much you grow. And as a boss, I feel like you should also, a good boss obviously acknowledges his or her employees, accomplishments as well. So yeah, definitely share what you're doing. I'm gonna share this with all my friends, because this is my first time doing something like this. So it's a huge milestone to just even say I'm doing this, you gotta speak it, you gotta live it, you gotta honor it in all honesty. And from my opinion anyway.
Thank you, Cam, for your openness to engaging with the cybersecurity community today. I really enjoyed the conversation. And I want to thank the audience too for spending part of your day with us. And also, we want to extend a special thanks to Chuck Kopelke at UC Berkeley Center for Long-Term Cybersecurity and All in Recording Studios for supporting us through this interview. And please feel free to continue the conversation by reaching out to us on LinkedIn or Twitter.
Yeah. I just want to say thank you to everyone for checking in too. I'll try to mention, all in and Chuck's emails and or their social media handles in the description below. And I just really appreciate you all giving me this chance for showing up and doing this. This is the first of hopefully many. But thanks, everyone. All right. Y'all have a good one. Bye.